As I said, this is really an overview of the 2020 GMA Safety and Liability Grant process. Nothing much has changed from the previous years, but if you want a refresher or you process, that's what this is for. Again, we're gonna talk about the grant requirements for 2020, which again, nothing much has changed. We'll just go over some of the different things, and then talk about action planning and loss analysis for those members that are required to do that. Again, everybody's welcome to do it, but they're all, for the grant, only people over $100,000 in premiums are required to complete the action plan and loss analysis. We'll go through both of those. As you can see, we have updated through 2014, and we've been the grant has been existing long before that. But as you can see, we're averaging within GRMA somewhere around over $300,000 the last year. Typically, we only have budgeted $200,000, and then the board approves additional funding. So I believe I requested this year additional funding for $370,000. So based on the timing at the end of the grant, as of 31st, 2019, I had requests for items up to $270,000, but we only had $370,000, but we only had $320,000 or $323,000 receipts, proof of purchase. So people didn't get their proof of purchase in on time. So you need to make sure, again, you start this process early. Again, the same thing within workers' compensation. We budgeted $300,000 a year for workers' compensation. We approved $298,000, but we only paid out $265,000 because we didn't receive all that money. So the things you need to learn from that is get your invoices for purchase in quickly, and we'll be able to get that information to you. I got a question from Donna. Your voice is going in and out. Maybe I'm on the side, but not sure. So it might be on it. So who else is having an issue? Anybody else having an issue with hearing me? Is there anybody else having an issue hearing me? And just raise your hand, please. So I think, Donna, same thing happening, slightly same issue. Okay, I'm okay, no problem. So let's try it again. Let's keep on. If you're continuing to hear me go in and out, made a little bit of a change. If you're continuing to hear me go in and out, raise your hand or let me know. I can hear you using the computer audio. So, okay. Donna, are you still having an issue trying to hear me? Let me know. I can switch to a phone audio just as well. It might work a little bit better. You're still having an issue, Donna? Okay. I'm not sure what to do. So I'm just going to continue on, and if you have questions after this, please let me know, and I'll try and answer those individually. But do the best job. If you can't hear it, I'll send out a recording, and you can listen to it recording. If you're not able to hear it now, more than likely the recording will be good, and you can listen to just the recording when it comes. So we'll go that way. Again, eligibility. Same things that have been requirements for the last several years. You have to be a member of the program that you're applying for. So respectively, if GRMA or workers' compensation, you have to be a member of, if you want a grant from each, then you have to be a member of each. You have to be current in your contributions and or fees, again, which is only reasonable. Again, participation by any member of at least one LGRMS sponsored training. That's our regional event. We have changed that a little bit a couple years ago, and specifically last year, where we allowed employees to attend webinars. And the expectation is that at least there would be attendance by at least three webinars. That could be by 3 different people or 2 different people. but three of the webinars, and this would count as one, and you would take notes on that and write a 1 to 2 paragraph statement on what was covered within that particular webinar. That's a requirement. Then that would meet your regional training requirement. A designated person, a specific person as the safety coordinator. Again, most of you have that. Here's the deal with that, and just to be completely frank with you, a lot of people are designated as safety coordinators that probably don't have the skill set to be safety coordinators, what we're looking for. And we have not changed that requirement, so it probably goes back to us on our fault. But ultimately speaking, we want the safety coordinators to be somebody that at least has the ability to work outside their department, to be able to hold meetings, discuss things, and coordinate safety, again, as it is. So you might coordinate training, you might coordinate the inspections, you might coordinate other actions that are being taken. So you would have some leadership skills. You don't necessarily have to be in a leadership position, but you should have leadership skills. You should be able to have the ability to talk to other leaders within the organization, to express them the need to do different things and how and why they should do it. So to meet the requirement, we want you to have a designated safety coordinator, but ultimately we'd really like to see that safety have some leadership skills and some other skills to be able to, again, coordinate safety. The expectation is that we want them to finish safety coordinator modules 1, 2, and 3. Again, we allow them 3 years to complete those 3 modules. You can take all 3 at the same time, take them the same year, or you can spread those out over 3 years. But if you're a new safety coordinator and that is meeting the expectation for the grant, then the expectation is you would at least have 1 safety coordinator module under your belt. Again, the last one, the next one is show proof of a written policy for holding safety meetings and or training. And we also have a policy in regards to inspections. The expectation, you don't have to have a big long policy, and typically I have a couple different documents that have probably a half a page on there that talk about the requirements for conducting safety meetings, and it needs the expectation to be reviewed by the administrator, manager, and it can be put in your one of your handbooks. It could be put in a standalone, whatever you like, but you should have that policy or policy statement included in something that talks about manage the safety coordinator or manage the safety training. The next piece is, again, proof of a policy for safety inspections. Again, that is in that same half a page document that I'll provide you if you're looking for it. So all you have to do is request that from me and I'll get you both of those. They also would be expecting, so those 2 things, if you turn those in once, you do not have to continually turn in those policies. We have those documented. If you've been approved the last year, we aren't going to look for those again. So we'll talk about a checkbox within the actual check sheet that says, hey, I submitted those last year, so you won't have to resubmit those again. But we will be looking for proof that the safety meetings and or training and or inspection policy has been put in place. So we want to see documentation, attendance sheets with dates and names of when those meetings occurred. We'll want to see inspection documentation of when those inspections occurred. So those are things that we will look at on an annual basis. And we would like to see you, basically, if you sent in your application grant last year at June and you're sending it again this year at June, we'd like to see the last inspections at least that you completed as proof. The next is a mandatory seatbelt usage policy. Again, a lot of people have these. The only thing that we offer, as long as you send this in, you don't have to send this again, but we do want to know how you administered that or how you communicated that to your employees. You don't have to necessarily show us proof, but a lot of people say, hey, we included this in your pay envelope, we included it in the employee handbook, and this is reviewed by every employee. If that's what you've done, then that's sufficient. Again, if you've done it last year, you do not have to turn that in again this year. And then the last bullet point on this is for all members with premiums over $100,000, the expectation is you're going to do a loss analysis and action plan. Again, the rationale, the more premiums you pay, the more resources you have, you should be able to do a loss analysis and action plan. Those members that don't pay a lot of premiums probably don't have a lot of employees, probably don't have a lot of claims, so there's not a massive amount of data that's going to say, hey, this is where our incidents are. The more employees you have, the more premium you pay, more likely you are going to have a trend, and we want you to be able to identify that and address it. And I'll talk a little bit more about action planning later on in the presentation. So the grant levels, again, we changed this a couple years back. They max out at really about 5% of premium. So anywhere between $60,000 and $200,000, you get 5% of premium. So you can do the math if you know your premium. If you don't know your premium, you can send me an email and say, hey, what's our max level eligibility for a grant? And I'll send you that. They max out at $10,000. Again, premiums between $6,000 and $60,000 will receive exactly $3,000 in premium, and then premiums between $1,000 and $6,000 will receive 50% of premium. Still a pretty good deal. Again, less than $1,000 will receive $500. So that's the way the premiums work. And again, if you want, this is all reimbursable based on your needs. So here's a couple of examples. The city of Happyville pays $330,000 in GRMA and $143,000 in workers' compensation. Again, doing the basic math, they would max out at $10,000 for GRMA and $7,200 for workers' compensation. The city of Partytown, again, lots of happy Partytown cities, pays $15,000 in GRMA and $3,600 in work comp. They would be eligible for $3,000 because they're between the $3,000 and $6,000 in premiums, and then they would pay $3,000 between the $6,000 and $60,000, and then work comp they'd be at $1,800, which is basically half of their premium there. The city of Cleanville pays $94,000 in GRMA, $58,000 in workers' compensation. They'd be eligible for $4,700 in GRMA and $3,000. So those are basic examples. If you want specifics, I can provide those to you, what your member, your employer will get. Again, we also reimburse for 25% of IT in a box, and you do not have to have any supporting documents for that. So we have plenty of members that work with the IT in a box, and they don't have any training, any policies, anything. They just send, hey, IT in a box, we will automatically, with any effort, reimburse you at the end of the year for 25% of that particular service. So depending, again, maxing out at your maximum level of the grant. Additional program guidelines, again, document mandatory use policy or SOP. Again, the expectation is if you're requesting anything that requires a policy, we'd like to see that policy. For instance, if you're looking at confined space equipment, you'd want to see a confined space policy. If you have a respirator or SCBA, we want to see a policy associated with that. The rationale is that AEDs, and we have sample policies for each of those, so don't let that dissuade you from getting those. The premise is we don't want you just getting equipment and not using it properly. We want you to get that equipment, and we want you to use it within a safe manner. We want you to have an AED, have it on the wall, and then nobody uses it. Nobody knows how to use it. Nobody knows how to maintain it. It doesn't provide a lot of assistance that way. Same thing with body cameras, body armor, and everything else. Grant funds will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis until eligible funds are expended. Again, we in the past have approved all additional grant funds. As you saw from the first couple slides, we've extended GRMA by $170,000. We haven't had really had a lot of requests for work comp over the limits, but we'll do that. But it is to your advantage to today, after sitting through this webinar, is to complete your grant application and send it to us. The quicker you get it to us, the more likely it is to get back to you quicker. What happens is people come in the month of October when this ends, and I probably got 40 different grants, and we at that point in time we'll hit the end of our money within GRMA, and I'll have to sit there and wait until I get approval from the board to extend that extra $170,000, $150,000. So I don't send approval letters probably until November, early December. So then it takes a long time. The quicker you can get me your application, the more likely you're going to get your funds early and get them and be able to manage that. Again, purchases must be made during the calendar year between January 1st and 12/31. We actually extend that a little bit through January. We allow people to go through January of the following year just to be able to give them a little bit of flexibility based on the extra amount of time that we have for approval. The review of the 2020 grant applications will begin 2/1. I've already received a few grants. All grant applications must be received or postmarked before October 31st, 2020. Please avoid submitting multiple application grant. So if you have a GRMA, you have a work comp, this is what we suggest you do. Get everybody together and say, hey, what are we looking for? If you have, I would submit, multiple items. So if you have, let's say you're approved for $10,000 on work comp, send me $15,000 worth of items, because what we'll do is I'll take those to the GMA board and I'll say, hey, these are things that are what they're looking for. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'll give my recommendation, and they might approve 10,000 of that 15,000. They might approve 15,000 of it. But if you put all that 15,000, then you can go back and prioritize which items you're going to want to purchase after they have been approved. So the more you submit, the better it is, more flexibility you have on the return end. Again, what happens is a lot of people will put in grants and they'll say, hey, we want this big item, or we want these little item, whatever it is. We don't approve them because they don't meet the criteria, and then we got to go start back at ground one. So I would submit, if you're both a GRMA and a work comp member, submit them both at the same time. Submit a bunch of different items. Don't submit, the more items, applications you submit, the less likely they're going to be approved in a timely manner. Again, please avoid submitting multiple grants. The grant requests must be signed by the mayor or top administrator. The premise behind this is we don't want the fire department submitting a grant application and the police department submitting a separate grant application, public works submitting a separate one. We want them all together. So the premise is, if we had the mayor or top administrator signing this, they're saying by doing that I've reviewed those and these are the items that I want sent for approval. Again, procedures to request grant monies. Again, you want to determine the need that fits the intent of the grant. The premise behind this is really to help you out with larger items. So, we haven't changed this, but I'm really looking at potentially changing this to only items over a certain dollar amount, like $1,000 or $2,000 or something that is a certain percentage. A lot of people are getting smaller items, and those are okay at this point in time. But we want something that's going to help change the safety. Some of those smaller items you should be able to process within your own budget. Determine all requirements have been met. Again, we'll talk about the checklist in a little bit. Complete the application. We'll go through that. Gather the documentation. We're going to talk about that. You're going to submit that to our office. You can email it to me. And actually, Courtney Stepter is also the other person you can email that to. So she's managing those, and I will just automatically forward those that I receive, but you can email them to the admin thing there. Wait to receive a confirmation dial request. Typically, after we receive an email on a grant application, say we'll receive it, we'll then review it, and then if we need anything that, you'll see an email, and I'll talk about those. If additional grant information or requests are gathered, information returned at the LGRMS, and we'll talk about that a little bit also. Again, program administration. Each grant request will be submitted to approval by the committee made by the deputy executive. So it's basically a board. I take it to Randy Logan and Stan Dees, and they look at your items, and we discuss the relevance, if they're related, if they're approved, if it's consistent, and we look at those, and they make the final determination whether to approve it or not. Again, from my perspective, if you can answer this question, this is going to help us reduce workers' compensation claims. If you can answer that question or how it's going to do that, it's going to be approved under work comp. If this is how this item is going to help reduce property and liability claims, that item is going to be approved under property or GMA. Again, the grant timeline typically takes between 3 to 4 months, depending on the situation, how quickly you get documentation. I've received and approved grants, depending on the cycle of how I get them reviewed. Another thing, probably within 2 weeks. I've gotten the grant, and right before a grant meeting with Stan and Randy, and then they approved it. I sent the approval letter. The city sent the probably the same or next day they sent their proof of purchase, and I process it right there. So within 2 weeks, they got the grant. On the same respect, if it hits a different part of the cycle, I haven't had a meeting with grant that, or I received the application, we give feedback, we're waiting for documentation there, then we're waiting on a meeting with Stan and Randy, and then I get that and I send approval, and then we're waiting on the proof of purchase from you. It will take longer to do that. So that's the basic process there. This is the grant application. Again, this is one that's filled out, and I kind of like it. Again, it's got the city name or the member name, the date, the contact. This is very, very important. So whoever's going to manage the grant process, please put their name and title, and especially their contact information. So clearly write their phone number, clearly write their email address. And the premise is, that's how we're going to communicate with everything. So if we need stuff, we need more information, there's a delay, whatever it is, that's the person we're going to communicate with. So make sure that is all clearly documented. And then again, this designated safety coordinator, if it's different than, or even if it is, we want to know who that is, because we'll check that record to determine if they've had training and if they've met that expectation. The items requested for reimbursement, you could do it in this form, you can send it in a separate sheet, but we really want to see the item, the name of the item you're requesting, and how it's going to either reduce workers' compensation or GMA risks, basic claims, and then the estimated cost. It does not have to be the exact cost, because we'll be looking for proof of purchase. So that's what we're reimbursed. It can be an estimate. So you can go out and say, I think it's going to be $200. I think it's going to be $5,000. We're not looking for exact numbers by any means. Again, you're going to have it signed by the top administrator or mayor within your particular city. Again, somebody that has overall approval within your city to do that. You can print the name and then have them sign it. You're going to provide a copy of the signed written policy for seat belts. Again, if you've already done that, we've had that previous years, you don't need to do that again. A document manual use SOP. So if you're, again, this is if you're requesting respirators or body armor or whatever it is, that would be something you could put on there. Members and employees has attended LGRMS sponsored training. So if you have attended regional training, you can send that documentation in. We can also check it. You can send in, if you've attended the webinars, you want to send that in, you can send that in there. We'll be looking for it. Receipt or proof of purchase, you don't have to send those in at this point in time. And in fact, I'd rather have you send them in later. just to make sure we have continuity. So I'll send you an email once it's approved, and I would expect you to send those in at that point in time, but you can send them in with the original grant. If application's current in response to recommendations, so you don't have to really do anything for that, but we'll be looking at documentation to ensure that your all recommendations have been responded to. A copy of properly signed written policy for safety meetings and inspections. Again, if you have the copy, if you've already previously submitted that, you can see the two arrows, the red arrows, again, submitted in the previous policy year. If you've been approved for the grant previously, then you do not need to resubmit. Again, a copy of the signed written policy. Again, if you do that for proof, but we want to see a sample documentation of meetings that are going on, so that, you know, if whatever dates you've completed those within that last year period, send those in. The same thing with inspections. Designated safety coordinator, current attendance with safety coordinator training. If you have that documentation, certificates, or when you've attended, let us know. We'd love to see those, and we'll check that documentation. List of all requested items. Again, we want to see that in the cost. You can do it in this form. You can do it in a separate sheet. And then only required for premiums over $100,000, we want a signed copy of your action plan and loss analysis. And we'll talk about that in a next few slides. So items that can be approved under work comp. Again, really, again, if the question will ask, can the item requested reduce the risk of an employee injury or workers' compensation claim? If you can state that, if you can state that specifically, we'll be doing that. It will be approved. So typical items: training videos, fees for attending safety courses, seminars, things such as that is what we're approved. Trenching boxes, aprons, face shields, all things we have approved. For GRMA, the same thing. If it can reduce a property and liability claim, it's more than likely going to be approved. So certification fees, we do approve a lot of cameras, a lot of other things. Power DMS is something that we're really pushing. That is a system that's used within police departments to help manage policies and training. It's a really great system that a lot of very progressive departments are using. And if you want to be CALIA certified or state certified, it's a system that is, you know, very much very valuable. We do have a list of items, and I'll send this list with you of all the items that I've approved in the last few years. So it's categorized by chemical, electrical, ergonomic. You look through there. But again, you can use that list, or you can come up with things yourselves. And what I would suggest you do is talk to your departments. What do you need? What are you having issues? What's your biggest risk out there? Well, my risk is I have to lift this 100-pound barrel. What do you need? Well, it'd be nice to have a device that did this, and it costs $1,000, $1,500. Have your folks look at those things. Or my biggest risk is whatever it might be. Look at those things and come up with good ideas to help reduce things. Get your employees involved in this process. This is a great way to get employee engagement and to get people excited about the safety process. Again, ineligible requests. Again, personal safety equipment. We're a little bit inconsistent on this, but disposable gloves, safety shoes, things like that, we have not approved in the past. Weapons of any type, so guns, tasers, we don't approve. Again, anything that could be used for general equipment. So I want a new desk, I want a new ergonomic chair. Those are things that we have not approved. So computers, things to that effect, we have not approved, unless they're really, really specifically used in a training environment. And we have approved a couple of those when they put a lot of effort towards it. Again, once you send in your application, we'll send you an email saying, hey, we've received it. But after that, then Courtney will be sending an email saying, hey, we've received your grant application, we reviewed it, and these are the items that we're looking for. So again, Courtney will help manage that. I will send you, once you've been approved by the board, I'll send you an email saying, hey, you've been approved. There's one thing new in this. Again, within this, we tell you how much you've been approved for, the specific items that you've been approved for. There's usually a graph or chart to show that. The new thing item on this is is we want to see when you're sending in your proof of purchases back, I want to see and I'm going to send you an Excel spreadsheet that you can populate with the item, the total for that item, and the receipt for that particular item, whether it goes in work comp or GRMA. And the premise behind this, typically, a lot of times I get proof of purchase that are 40 to 50 to 100 pages of documentation, and it's very difficult to reconcile what those are. So I'm asking for a little help in regards to the reconciliation. So I'll work with you to do that, but I'll be sending that Excel file when you see an approval letter, and the expectation is, again, won't take a huge amount of work, is to reconcile and tell how much those totals to. What's the receipts you provided, and how much do they total to on both the work comp and the GRMA side. Action planning and loss analysis. Again, this is really only for those members with premiums of $100,000 or more. The expectation is you're going to do a loss analysis. We want you to know where your losses are in two forms. One, what departments are they occurring in? Is it the police department? Is it public works? Is it for work comp or property and liability? You should be able to know where are your major issues. And then within those departments, those areas where you're having the most issues, what is the trend? Is it slips and falls? Is it motor vehicle operations? Is it ergonomics? Is it police operations? Whatever it might be, we want you to be able to determine that. And I'll help you walk through this. I'll send you a loss trend analysis. This provides you, I'll send you a file. If this is something you're going to do, it'll have all this information. You can read it section by section. But the loss trend analysis is this. We have different forms. This provides this percentage by department. We have another form I'm going to show it a little bit later. This also shows you percentage within the department that your high percentages, where those injuries or losses are occurring, both on a work comp and property and liability. This is a work comp rate. This is another chart I can send you based on your request. So again, what I would ask you to do, if you want this information from me, please send me a request via an email, and I'll have it run and I'll send it to you. This really shows you how you compare to other members with claims over $500 per 100 employees. As you can see here, within this particular member, 2014 through 2016, a little bit old, but the same thing. And you have for all those years. For all years, they're at 2.75 or almost 3 injuries per 500 employees. If you compare them to the overall, they're at almost 2.67. So a little bit higher, but not a whole lot higher. We have members that are double the triple what other members are. We also have it by size. So if you're an extra large member, I think it's anybody over 100 employees. Large members somewhere between 50 and 100. Medium is between 25 and 50, and so on. And I can get you that breakdown too if you're interested in hearing more about that. Same charts. This just basically shows you, or different charts shows you based on where the claims are occurring, both on total incurred and on number of claims. And again, it gives you some analysis down below, and you can use that to determine where your claims are occurring. The next is, again, overall within all departments where the program, whether it's ergonomics or law enforcement opportunities. Again, I can help you walk through this particular loss analysis for your group. Again, from each department, there's police, and it tells you within there, law enforcement ops seems to be the biggest issue within that area. And I can tell you what belongs. There's other charts that talk about contact that tell you about what specifically belongs within law enforcement operations. So let's just talk a little bit more about loss analysis. Loss analysis is just one piece of this. You know your city, you know your organization, you know your much better than I or any of our field reps will ever know it. You know what goes on, and the people that work in your department know even more than that. So we want you to do the loss analysis, but ultimately speaking, I'd rather have you focus on something that's going to help reduce risk than the loss analysis, because the loss analysis doesn't always tell the right story. It doesn't always tell something. Sometimes it says hey, this is our biggest loss, but that might not be where that's going to reoccur. It might not, that loss or risk might already be controlled or might be removed in some manner. So we want you to focus on things that are existing out there, things that you can control, things that you're going to have some ability to control. So for instance, within different members, they might not have a department manager that is cooperative. So you might have your most of your losses in a particular area, but your department manager or issue is not going to be controllable. Let's say it's property related and it's based on a storm. Well, it's going to be difficult to control that. So I would focus on something else from a GRMA perspective that's going to be easier to do. Once you've done the loss analysis, I really think, I would schedule a meeting with your leadership, really identify within the department level, even on a city level, and say, hey, this is where our losses are, and within these departments, these are our losses. And then we need to sit down and develop an action plan. We do not want you as the safety coordinator or risk manager developing this action plan in a vacuum. We want you to get the department manager, police chief, or public works department manager, or fire department manager, whoever it might be, involved in this process. We also would love to have you get frontline leaders and employees. Let them understand where their losses are, understand how they know better what the true risks are. They probably know better where you can help to reduce those risks. So get those people involved. You can also get me involved. You can also get your field rep, loss control rep involved. We'd be happy to help you develop that action plan. And this is just an example of the action plan. Again, you got two. This is based on some loss analysis from the overall pool. Again, you have the police department has 36% of the cost of work comp, 44% of the cost of property and liability. Public Works 17 and 10. Again, those are the two departments. And then you look at within the police department, motor vehicles are the biggest opportunity. That's typically where we see most of our action. So, within a process, we would like you to, one, look at what's the root cause of this. What's really causing this issue within that particular department? You can say, okay, we're going to do training, but does training really address what the issue is? And I'll say this, I know we do a lot of training. We'll go out and provide 10 hours of training for a particular individual within the department. The problem is, if leadership is not engaged, if leadership is not aligned with the message we're trying to provide to those employees, that 10 hours of training is not going to provide a lot of things that's going to change behavior. It should do something to help change behavior. It should do something to help change the culture. So ultimately, part of your action plan, well, it could be sat down with the department manager to get them aware of what the losses are, got them to commit to establishing a goal, set up a policy in regards to what our losses were, and then did training on that policy, and then measured the response. It can be as simple as that, but we really want it to attack whatever their particular highest risk is. This is just the accountability and performance chain. Again, within any action plan, within any culture, it's ultimately about accountability and performance. If you don't hold employees accountable for their actions, you're basically telling employees that those actions are okay. So having a policy without any level of accountability towards it means that you don't value that policy. And whenever you're implementing a policy and you want people to be held accountable for it, you should really have an accountability performance chain. Again, setting clear expectations so that everybody knows what the expectations are. Removing barriers. So let's say that the expectation is that everybody's going to wear safety glasses within a particular area. That's a pretty clear expectations. But for some people to wear safety glasses, they have prescription glasses, and the safety glasses you have on that they can wear don't fit over those prescription glasses. So that's a barrier that would prevent them from doing that. And again, once they have that, you haven't addressed it, you need to address it. Again, you want to make sure everybody's capable of following that, both mentally and physically. If they're not, then you need to work towards that. Again, providing quality training. Saying, hey, wear the safety glasses is not quality training. You probably want to really talk about why it's important to that employee, why it's important to the member, the risks that are going out there, the different ways they can wear them, how they can get that information. It doesn't have to be an hour-long classroom presentation, but you should providing training. Quality training is essential. Again, providing feedback on the importance of wearing it. Supervisors should have that skill to be able to provide value-added feedback, not just yell at people, not just tell people they have to wear their safety glasses, but continually preach to them, and then ultimately hold them accountable if necessary. And if you don't have that accountability piece, you're not going to be successful. Again, leadership authorization and approval. We want your action plan to be approved by leadership. If leadership has not bought into the process, does not adopt the process, is not managing the process, then it's less likely to be considered serious. It's less likely to be considered successful. So make sure they're engaged. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions and or comments? Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I will let you go. Please don't hesitate to give me a call. As I said at the beginning of this, I'll be sending out a recording, the presentation, and several other documents. You can always pick up the phone and give me a call, send me an email. I'll be happy to help you out with whatever we can. But in the interim, you have a great rest of the weekend, and we will talk later.